Yesterday was Thanksgiving. Did you know that a scream can change your life? I found that out the hard way when I was fixing the shingles on my roof 2 years ago. It turns out that my daughter, Krista, was just fighting with one of her friends over a Barbie doll. The scuffle was completely forgotten 2 minutes later, but I'd had no idea what caused the scream. I panicked, slipped, and painted the bricks on the ground below an involuntary hue of red. Associative visual agnosia was the reason I couldn't use a toilet by myself after the fall. I still had all of my motor skills, I just didn't recognize the damn thing in front of me. White, round, and smooth could be a shitter or a baby's ass, so I wasn't just going to start pissing on the object in question without more information. I could recognize shapes just fine, and I understood ideas as well as I had before. But the blow to my brain damaged the link between sight and concept. My wife, Melanie, was an angel. I really think moving on would have been impossible without her. She lived, laughed, and loved right alongside me, but more importantly, she suffered as I did. That's the definition of loneliness, you know? It's not whether you share the good times that determines how alone you are. It's whether your own pain causes someone else to hurt. She suffered, and in doing so, she began to make me whole again. Things weren't the same, not by a long shot, but we created something new, and that thing became normal. The holidays were happy. We had a baby. The baby would grow up knowing me only in my brokenness, and therefore would always see me as whole. I insisted on being a person with something broken, and not a broken person. I shooed Melanie and Krista away while I cooked the entire Thanksgiving meal by myself. It was a hell of a challenge, but with Post-it notes and patience, I made it happen. I was feeling normal again, real again, as I was able, literally, to put food on my family's table. The smell of Thanksgiving filled the air. Krista snuggled up next to Melanie as they watched a movie. I could hear the baby crying gently in the distance. I felt warm and at peace. I was so excited to unveil the Thanksgiving feast. We had a delicious 19.13-pound tom turkey. Warm, fluffy rolls nearly tumbled out of the basket. There was enough thick, rich gravy to coat every morsel, and I made the cranberry sauce from scratch, using my grandmother's recipe. I instructed my family to sit down at the table as I presented the turkey, piping hot and fresh from the oven. Did you know that a scream can change your life? I had to put the turkey down just to cover my ears. Why were both of them shrieking with such ungodly terror? I looked at the table. Wait, something was different. Not right. What did that shape mean? Horror slowly dawned on me. There was a raw turkey in the baby's high chair. I win. My Thanksgiving was far worse than yours. Kids can say the dumbest shit. Hey, don't get me wrong, I would die for my 5-year-old son. I love him more than I love myself. But that doesn't make his commentary any more meaningful. Any parent who's had to explain why jelly beans can't go in the toaster will comprehend. Every parent who's had to clean melted jelly beans out of the toaster will empathize. So, Daddy, there's something scary under the bed, had gotten old long before my wife and I loaded Liam into the car to begin the 2-day trip to her parents' house for Thanksgiving. It's your turn, I mumbled to Stacy as I rolled over on the pull-out bed. Last time, I had to clean an entire bottle of Gatorade pee, she huffed. That counts for 2. Besides, he called for you. She pushed me to the edge of the uncomfortable bed. Sighing, I stood up and shambled over to the minuscule twin bed on the other side of the room and sat down on the mattress. Liam, do you remember that I need a good night's sleep so I won't crash the car while I'm driving tomorrow? But something's moving under the mattress, he whispered in a voice that was inappropriately dramatic. I rubbed my eyes before trying to focus on Liam's silhouette in the faint moonlight. Matt's one of my best friends from college, and he's being very generous to let us stay in his house. I'm sure he gave us a room without any monsters in it. That usually calms him down. Usually, but not always. This was one of those not always moments. Liam wheezed like he was finishing the final stretch of the Boston Marathon, which meant that I could either check under the bed for potential threats or spend the next 30 minutes mopping up piss. The tapping is coming from beneath my pillow. Check that part of the bed first, he gasped. I'll be honest, That part made my hair stand up just a little as I got to my hands and knees. "Okay, Liam," I announced as I lifted the edge of his sheet. "I'm sticking my head underneath the bed right now, and damn, it stank." What was Matt keeping under here? I blinked, struggling to see in a space where the moonlight barely reached. The first thing I recognized was the eye. It stared at me, just inches away from my nose. I really didn't want to move, because that would mean accepting what I was seeing as real. The hand on my wrist forced me into action. Her grip was slimy and gritty, and it left a cold, wet, and copper-smelling residue on my skin. I pulled away and scrambled to my feet, very angry with gravity for confusing me. I'll admit that a tiny, selfish part of my brain contemplated running away from Liam and heading out the door, but I ignored the thought and leapt forward, scooping my son from the bed and turning around. It was enough time for a clammy hand to find my ankle. This time, her grip felt like ice, but I broke away and stumbled to the pull-out bed, crashing onto Stacy as Liam screamed. That was enough to get her from asleep to fully standing in a quarter of a second. "Dave," she gasped, "what are you—" She didn't need to finish. The woman now crawling out from beneath Liam's bed was visible even in the dim moonlight. It was my turn for an inappropriate piss, as I realized that she was standing between us and the only door. Still urinating, I grabbed my son in one arm and my wife in the other and ran for the window. We had just enough time to crawl onto the roof before she reached us. The next couple of hours were a blur. I'd like to say that I climbed down from the roof gracefully, but I'm trying to stay as honest as possible. Without our car keys or cell phones, we had to pound on a neighbor's door until they woke up. The police arrived faster than answers did. Matt was taken away in handcuffs, and the woman was taken away in an ambulance. The truth eventually found its way to us. Matt had been kidnapping and torturing people, mostly women, for years. He'd pulled the tongue from the mouth of victim beneath Liam's bed, and she'd actually been begging us for help as she bled to death. She didn't survive. Matt hadn't planned on letting us leave his home with this knowledge. He'd been waiting in the hall, intending to catch us as we ran out. Apparently, capturing people in the moment of panic is the biggest thrill for him. He hadn't counted on us climbing out of the 2-story window. That's the only reason we're alive. He'd already killed 19 people, and another 13 were trapped at various places within his home in various makeshift torture chambers. At first, I'd refused to believe that one of my best friends was capable of what prosecutors claimed. But that was before they showed me his notebook, which documented the grisly details of each murder. At the end of it, 5 pages had been set aside for Stacy, Liam, and me. He was going to make me choose one of them to get tortured first, then force me to watch every second of it. So that was how my Thanksgiving travel plans went awry. I hope yours played out better. I doubt Liam will be able to sleep alone until he's a teenager. To be honest, I don't blame him. He's seen the world for the worst it can be. Kids really do say the dumbest shit, but that cannot compare to the magnitude of adults who do the dumbest shit. A man murdered my whole family on Thanksgiving. I met him today. My 1-dorm apartment is empty once again during the season of turkeys and family. No apple pies will be baked for me. No uncles or distant relatives from the far west to come visit. Hell, not even a good drunk debate on shitty American politics. Whenever I'm not working retail, I am a driver for Uber. Thanksgiving is one of the best days to work delivering because of a good volume of demand and great tips as well. I could make upwards of $600 if the stars lined up correctly. Guess having no family obligations sometimes has its benefits. The day was nothing special, just a lot of driving and small talk about rich people's family traditions or latest family gossip. However, it wasn't until I drove to a Sheraton hotel to pick up David that my day took a twist. David recognized the black 2017 Toyota Camry because he came up to my window once I rolled up. "Is this Mordred?" "Yes, please make yourself comfortable and I'll drive you to your destination." I took a look at David, a well-dressed and attractive Asian man in his early 30s with glasses. Most importantly, he had a long scar on his right cheek, one that I gave him nearly a decade ago. Mordred is quite a name. Your parents are major fans of King Arthur, I assume? Ah, yes. They were obsessed unhealthily with the Arthurian legend. Hell, my older sister was named Morgan, and my older brother was Lancelot. Wow. And these were your legal names? Not nicknames? Yep. It was kind of weird introducing myself at school. I should change it, though. I think I want to dissociate myself from my family. That's unfortunate. I have done a lot of research on the Arthurian mythos, mostly due to some strange events of my life. That was the confirmation I needed to know that David was the reason I had no one with me anymore at the Thanksgiving table. I couldn't have been more than 12 years old that Thanksgiving. I have tried suppressing the memory of it, but it all comes back. My father really enjoyed playing the part of King Arthur, which is how I think he met my mother. It was so ingrained in them that every Thanksgiving the family tradition was to come dressed as Arthurian characters. If it wasn't for the fact our house was made of bricks, you would think it was the Middle Ages. All of my uncles and aunts, which I had many of, came dressed in these strange medieval knight suits and would wear masks or helmets to cover their faces. It felt cultish, to say the least. David, I'm sorry if I'm intruding, but what strange events are you referring to? It's a bit of a coincidence you ask, considering it is Thanksgiving as well. The events are slightly traumatic, so I don't want to mention too much. Basically, one Thanksgiving, a bunch of weirdos once kidnapped me, and they all spoke in some strange medieval English. A bunch of weirdos is the best way I could have described them. That Thanksgiving, my sister Morgan finally turned 18. It meant she could finally wield the Excalibur. In classic Arthurian fashion, our Thanksgiving dinner for as many years as I could remember took place in this massive round table. The table was decorated just like a medieval banquet, except we ate Thanksgiving food until 9 p.m. After 9, the wielding of the Excalibur started. However, everyone under 18 had to leave the banquet. We could not leave our rooms either, not even to go to the bathroom. Hell, they even sent someone to guard our door. For many years, my sister Morgan and I theorized about what happened downstairs. We were young and innocent, but how could we have not known what horrors truly happened? If the loud, agonizing screaming that occurred during my family's horrific singing didn't give it away, then it should have been that putrid smell the day after. Now, I know it was the smell of corpses. Hell, how could the bloody round table the day after not have given it away either? My sister Morgan once told me she even saw the Excalibur and described it as a huge blade, just as the Arthurian legend told. Except, it was always colored mostly red. That infamous Thanksgiving, Morgan would not be joining me in our room after 9 p.m. Just like today's Thanksgiving, I was alone and afraid. The wielding of the Excalibur sounded like normal. The family would sing weird medieval songs in Latin while someone else would scream. I wondered how Morgan was enjoying herself. Faintly from my door, I could hear my father's voice say, "Ready, my Morgan, for battle. You will now ride with the king and slay a disgraced soul. Join us." The singing continued until I heard a sudden scream from Morgan. "I won't torture them!" The silence was deafening. All I could hear was my guard leave my door and head downstairs. That was my moment. I could see the tradition. Then, all the piercing screaming began. No more singing, just shrieking sounds and the sound of a bullet flying. I often tell my psychologist that I wish I had just stayed in my room. However, then I would never have met David, nor truly known the extent of my family's violent crimes. I entered the dining room, one which now looked like the Red Wedding. The bodies of my extended family, all with many stab wounds, lied in front of me. In the corner sat the corpse of my sister Morgan. She had a bullet wound in her head. Right next to her was the body of my father, with multiple stab wounds. I knew it was him because of the crown. His hand was next to the gun, the one which likely killed Morgan for disobeying his orders. I saw 3 people dressed as medieval peasants, still wielding blades and stabbing more of the people dressed as knights. They did not stop until every single one was dead. One of the peasants, an Asian man with cuts all across his body, who had just killed a knight, spoke. "Michael, find the nearest phone and call the police. Tell them we were abducted by a cult and nearly sacrificed. We need all the evidence possible to support our case. Mary, arm up. Look for any other of these cult members still hiding." How else would a 12-year-old child who just saw his whole family murdered react? Well, I grabbed a blade on the floor and charged for the man, slicing his face. He was clearly stronger, and it did not take him much to put me down. At that moment, I faced a blade and likely death. "David, no. He's just a child. He doesn't understand what these sick fucks did. He just tried to kill me. He's probably also indoctrinated in whatever sick shit these people were doing." A woman then got in front of me. "He still has a life to live. He can change, I promise. Spare him, David. We do not need to stoop the level of these demented idiots." A young David huffed and put the blade down. "You're right, Mary. Stuff him in a closet or something, so he's not a danger anymore. Hopefully he gets the help he needs." I spent the rest of that Thanksgiving, the first of many, alone. I could never look at the Arthurian legend the same way again. The many foster homes and child counselors didn't help much either. In the present, I stopped my car in front of a suburban Boston home. This was David's destination. "Here you go, sir. Happy Thanksgiving." "Thank you, Mordred. I'll make sure to tip you well." I watched David walk away, and inside the home, I could see a warm Thanksgiving meal and comforting family ready to welcome him. However, he turned around and ran to my car. "Mordred, wait." I stopped my car. "I know times are tough, especially in this day and age. If you don't have any other plans, would you like to join my family and I for Thanksgiving?" I gladly accepted. It would be my first ever Thanksgiving meal with others since that day. Now I could exact revenge and finally continue my family's tradition of wielding the Excalibur, for I am Sir Mordred, the traitor,